A question I've been asked a lot is, what is it like to be a professional basketball player overseas, where I get to travel the world playing in different leagues throughout my career and essentially live the dream of being paid to play the sport that I love? There are a lot of pros to the situation, where you get to embark on a journey mostly to somewhere you've never been before, which was my experience, and be given an apartment and a car and be paid tax-free. I was able to explore new countries, pick up some of the language, and just generally be part of a community and a culture I was unfamiliar with, which only added to my worldly views. On the court, there were typically 2 American imports on each team. Some leagues had more depending on where you were playing, and we were mixed in with the homegrown talent that ranged from younger guys attending university to older guys who had full-time jobs with basketball surrounding their schedule. For the import players, it was a full-time affair, and if you were motivated to get your work in like I was, I'd be up early doing my own workout before joining the head coach and the other import player for the morning session, and then we'll join some of the local players who hadn't gone to work or class yet for a morning team practice, and then at night we'll all come together for a full team practice. So practice was frequent, and as an import player, you had to make sure you were on top of your game, as the standards held on you were much higher than anybody else, as you were brought over to execute a specific task, which was to lead the team in playing at a high competitive level. Playing overseas also allowed veteran players to elongate their careers, as the competition was less stiff than it was in America, so guys were able to play for substantially longer amounts of time and earn more money on a longer stretch. As a rookie coming in, I was eager to prove myself and build up my profile in Europe and in the Middle East, and having a chance to play more minutes than I did in college gave me a great opportunity to do so. Being in an environment where your games are aired on TV and you're exposed to a wider audience put me in a position where I was recognized by people whenever I stepped out into the city, which made me cognizant of the responsibility I had to properly represent myself and my team at all times. Game day was the highlight, and I would lay out my jersey on my bed with my new sneakers to see what my fit would look like and imagine all the things I was going to be doing in the game. And when it came time for tip-off, I would go out there and leave it all on the floor in front of the cheering fans, hoping it led us to a victory. My career began in the Middle East and then in Europe and the Far East after that, which was a bit different from most players who typically started off in Europe and built up their entire profile there. Not only was I adjusting to a new team of players who ranged drastically in experience as pros, but I was also finding it difficult to assimilate to the Arabic culture and understand the language that my teammates and coaches spoke amongst each other. Our league was also not as organized as European leagues, and we suffered great delays in play, up to several weeks while the federation was busy settling on certain bureaucratic disagreements before we could begin. This was a very difficult period for me because I had all these grand expectations of playing from the get-go, but instead had to stomach watching my peers in other leagues get their season underway while I practiced for several weeks without pay. Although it was a privilege to play under the lights on national television in front of a large audience and be exposed to neighboring countries that had scouts and agents peering in to possibly recruit talent, there was a lot of pressure put on the import player to play at a very high level, with consequences of not doing so resulting in the fear of job security, where you could be sent home at a moment's notice, or a delay, or just lack of pay. No matter what your contract looked like, you were always under the gun to prove yourself, especially if you're an inexperienced rookie looking to make a name for yourself, as the pool of talent in America of players looking to take your position was vast. But as glamorous as things appeared on your contract, where the benefits of having an apartment and a free mode of transportation to get around are listed, there were little things off the court once you arrived in certain countries, like my experience in the Middle East for example, that quickly dulled some of the glamour of what I thought playing pro basketball overseas would be like. It was difficult to leave the comforts of your home for 8 to 10 months at a time and live in a foreign country where you were all alone and knew nobody in the crowd supporting you. In my rookie season, I was in a position where things I typically took for granted, like having a working cell phone when I was out and about, or having good Wi-Fi in my apartment to communicate with friends and family, was a hurdle. I was also responsible for washing my own game and practice jerseys and hanging them out on the rack to dry since I didn't have a dryer.